Good day, my name is Daniel Phaladi. I went to bed last night. I almost just cried myself to sleep. I had been talking to a couple of teachers, a number of teachers who contacted me. I think it was about 3 or 4 teachers who have contacted me, since we started to speak about the comprehensive sexuality education that's due to be rolled out in our South African schools next year. And these teachers, they actually say to me, thank you for speaking about this, Daniel, because we have actually resigned from teaching. And I said, spoke to one, why have you resigned from teaching? And their reasons were all the same. They said, we could not stand in front of the children and teach them Darwinism when we know for a fact that Darwinism has been debunked a long time ago. They said, Daniel, we are in touch with the latest researches. We know what biologists have found out there, and the theory of Darwinism of evolution has been debunked. So we could not stand in front of the innocent children and lie to them with a straight face. And I asked one, I said, so what do you do now? 2 teachers I spoke to, they are actually now street vendors. The other one went to become a domestic worker. She said, Daniel, I would rather become a domestic worker than to lie to children with a straight face about Darwinism, which is actually more of a religion than science. My heart was so broken, and I asked myself, I said, but is this really happening in South Africa? How do we have a government which has been voted for by the majority of the people? How do we have the same government then now implementing policies and curriculums and beliefs that are actually contrary to the majority of the people? It just did not make sense. And a whole lot more teachers started to call me and tell me that, listen, I cannot resign because I need the money, but I do not believe in this Darwinism religion that they want us to teach our children, because we read, we learn, we study, we know that Darwinism is actually pseudoscience. Now, to those that are wondering what Darwinism is, let me just give you a summary, a quick background. In 1859, a man by the name of Charles Darwin wrote a book named The Origins of Species. So what he says in that book is that everything that we call creation is actually not created. It's just something that was formed by what he called natural selection. In other words, one tiny little cell multiplied just by doing random selection and finding another cell and multiplying like that until we have life as it is today. So there is no design to life. There is no design, to the way we look. We just look like this, not because we were designed to look like this. No, he says we look like this because of natural selection. Natural selection made a man, natural selection made a woman. And so Darwin writes a book, he calls it The Origins of Species. Now, when Charles was asked about the origins of life, because obviously something has to be alive for it to start multiplying. Unfortunately, Darwinism offers absolutely no clue as to how life began.
How does Darwin or Darwinism say that life began?
Well, he didn't know, and in fact, nobody knows. So Darwinism, strictly defined, starts after the origin of life and deals only with living things.
Well, how can there be a theory about life without a theory about how life began? Prominent Darwinist Michael Roos attempted to explain one of them to me. He wasn't kidding. How did we get from an inorganic world to the world of the cell?
Well, one popular theory is that it might have started off on the backs of crystals.
My crystal ball.
Molecules piggybacked on the back of crystals forming, and that this led to more and more complex. But of course, the nice thing about crystals is every now and then you get mistakes, mutations, and that this opens the way for natural selection.
But at one point there was not a living thing,
Yeah.
and then there was a living thing. How did that happen?
Well, this is I've just told you. And I don't see any reason why you shouldn't go from very simple to more and more complex to more and more complex.
I don't either, but I don't know how you get from mud to a living cell. That's my question.
Yes, well, I've told you.
I think it's on the back
Try
of
one more
crystals.
time.
On the backs of crystals.
On the backs of crystals is at least one hypothesis, yes.
So that's your theory, and you think that is more likely and less far-fetched than intelligent design?
I think it is.
Now, the only reason, that they gave as to why there is life on Earth, they came up with a theory, they call it seeding. Seeding means that the aliens came and they planted life on Earth.
Well, then who did create the heavens and the earth?
Why do you use the word who? You see, you immediately beg the question by using the word who.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
And what was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right, how did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe.
Well,
but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God. So the Hebrew God, the God of the Old Testament, he doesn't exist in your view?
Certainly. I mean, that would be a very unpleasant prospect.
And the Holy Trinity of the New Testament,
nothing like that.
Now, you might be laughing, but it's actually true. This is what our children are taught at school. Because if you teach Darwinism, you're going to, at some point, have to teach about aliens, that are the creator of life. So, isn't it strange that schools have taken Bible studies that taught children about God the Creator, and they have replaced Bible studies with another religion, by the way, called Darwinism, because I'm going to prove to you quickly that Darwinism is a religion, it's not science at all. They are now teaching our children a religion of aliens. So God has been replaced with aliens. There has been more than 1,000 PhD biologists that have proved beyond a doubt that Darwinism is absolutely pseudoscience. They say that, they have proved that actually proved that natural selection cannot account for the complexity of life. Now, if you don't understand, let me give you an example.
When applied to the origin of life and the random formation of large biomolecules, probability theory clarifies the limitations of chance as a creative agent on the primordial Earth. For example, what are the odds a single protein could form exclusively through the blind interactions of chemistry? Our target is one smaller than average molecule made from 150 amino acids, each aligned to ensure a folded chain. Researchers have calculated that on the ancient Earth, the probability of success was 1 chance in 10 to the 164th power. That's one correctly sequenced protein chain for every 100 million trillion 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 failed attempts. But despite these enormous odds, some theorists argue that given enough time, anything is possible. Okay, let's test the validity of this opinion. We'll begin by establishing an ideal environment for chemical evolution, an imaginary world that will provide chance with every opportunity to succeed. First, we stock the oceans to capacity with amino acids. That means all the atoms on Earth, including its entire supply of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, and sulfur, are available to form 10 to the 41st complete sets of the 20 types of amino acids used to build proteins. Then we'll alter the laws of nature to protect these building blocks from the destructive rays of ultraviolet light and chemical contamination in the primordial soup. Now let's turn the chemistry loose and see what happens. The amino acids start bonding furiously. In our experiment, an entire chain of 150 units self-assembles in only 1 second. Since all 20 types of amino acids are available, at the majority of sites, there is a 5% or 1 in 20 chance the correct molecule will align in the chain. If the sequencing is incorrect, the chain is immediately destroyed and a new assembly begins. Throughout the planet, 6,000 million billion trillion trillion attempts will take place every minute. That means in 4.6 billion years, the oldest estimated age of the Earth, the number of chains that don't fold will exceed 10 to the 58th power. It's a staggering total, but nowhere near 10 to the 164th. The trials necessary, on average, to build a protein of 150 amino acids by chance.
If you don't understand, I'll make it easier for you. The chances of random selection creating one protein enzyme, it's equivalent to winning lotto every time 250 times without a fail. If you miss one lottery ticket, then that means the whole process will have to start again or it's aborted. So you will have to win lotto 250 times in a row. That's equivalent to the chances it would take for random selection to actually produce one protein. Thousands and thousands of PhD professors, even directors of biology institute have come up and absolutely debunked the Darwinist theory. They have taught us that everyone has got a right to freedom of religion, which is true, and that no other religion should be imposed upon anybody else, which is fine. We agree with that. But how come they are enforcing Darwinism, which is clearly a religion and not science at all? How come they have enforced that into our children? It's almost like our government has an agenda to create a godless society. Firstly, teach children that there is no God, only aliens were responsible for the creation of life through random selection. Secondly, when children do not believe in God anymore, then come with comprehensive sexuality education and tell them that you are neither male nor female, you are what you choose to be. Today you can choose to be male, tomorrow you can choose to be female, and you teach them there is no right or wrong pertaining to sex. We are going to say to the Department of Education, never again will we agree to a curriculum that seeks to erode our belief system, that seeks to erode our morals, that seeks to erode the family structure, that takes away parental rights, that seeks to bring in a foreign way of life that is strange and alien to the African nations.
And to you young learners out there, I mean, you've got technology at your fingertips. Make sure that this video goes viral. I mean, you've sent memes of jokes and comic videos to your friends. This is a matter of life and death. Make sure that this video gets your friends and their friends' friends and their relatives' friends. Let there not be a single learner that says, I didn't know that there is such an agenda by my own government to feed me things that my parents did not agree to, even things which my teachers did not agree to. Because if my teachers agree to these curriculums, my teachers would not be resigning. Now, lastly, let me just say this. Professor Bernstein did a documentary where he showed that Hitler actually believed in the religion of Darwinism. And that's why Hitler believed in random selection. So he believed, according to him, that if he could eliminate human beings that were not so highly evolved, according to him, they were Jews and blacks. So he thought if he could eliminate Jews and blacks, then he would actually form a super white race, an Aryan race with the most blonde hair, with the most blue eyes.
Was wir uns unter der deutschen Jugend der Zukunft wünschen, ist etwas anderes, als was die Vergangenheit sich gewünscht hat. Wir müssen einen neuen Menschen lernen, auf das unser Volk nicht an den typischen Degenerationserscheinungen dieser neuen Zeit zugrunde geht.
And look what atrocities were committed because of the Darwinism religion. Now, before any curriculum will ever be taught concerning comprehensive sexuality education or Darwinism, parents will have to admit to that or to agree to that curriculum. We cannot be told that there are no Bible studies, but on the other hand, we have Darwinism studies, which is actually a religion. So, the students that don't want nothing to do with the Bible, they can go to Darwinism. Students that believe in intelligent design, they can go to Bible studies. I am not a random person. That's why I believe in intelligent design, because I am intelligent.